Interactive game editing, camera preview, Jolt integration. Screw those, you don't need me to tell you about all those big headings. No, I'm here to tell you about all the hidden gems in this massive changelog bringing so many improvements to Godot in 4.4. I don't want to bore you with things that you can easily find yourself. There are more than 2,300 contributions in this update, and only the big flashy changes are going to be featured in the release notes. So I did some digging, and I found a lot of little changes that I'm personally really excited about, and I hope you will be too. To begin with, we have a complete overhaul of the quick open Windows UI, and it's different. I do like it a lot, it looks pretty neat, but I do see the potential argument that it feels like it doesn't fit in with the rest of the engine UI styling. So I think it'll have a lot of mixed feedback. What do you think? But before you write a comment about your strongly motivated opinion, I do want to point out some neat UX features that we have as a result of this PR. Along with the list view that we're familiar with, there's a new grid view available that lets you see all the icons of the search results, which is really nice to have when you're looking for a scene to open quickly. The window also now shows the history of recently opened files, which is a welcome addition. And something I'm really excited about is the new toggle for excluding the add-ons folder from the search results. I'm so tired of having random add-on files show up whenever I want to search for my own files. And just to make things even better, the fact that this window now supports fuzzy searching makes the window so much nicer to use. You don't have to spell things exactly for the search results to match. As long as you're in the rough vicinity of what you're looking for, you'll find it. Based on that, what do you think? Oh, and I forgot to mention that this UI has been used for the quick load action on resources in the inspector, and it's smart enough to open up in the grid view when loading textures. For comparison, this is what the UI for opening textures in 4.3 is like. Yeah, I love this improvement. It's going to make searching for images so much more straightforward. Something that has always annoyed me is the fact that dragging files into the file system places them in the previously selected folder. This isn't intuitive at all and always catches beginners off guard. So whenever you want to bring files into your project, you need to first select the target folder and then drag the files in. Well, no more, because files are now dropped into the folder that your mouse is hovering over. And if you drop something on top of another file, then it's placed in the same folder as that file. There's no visual feedback yet when you drag over the folders, but it's still a great improvement. I hope they get to it at some point soon though. Working with viewports just got a whole lot better. You can now finally select and interact with nodes inside a viewport by clicking on them directly. Gone are the days looking through the inspector trying to find that one node nested 7 layers deep. The great thing about this is that this also applies to the window node and any other derived node, since it extends from the viewport class. You can now scale multiple nodes in the 2D view. Just select multiple nodes, go to the scale mode and scale them like you normally would. But what's better is the fact that this also works in the default select mode. Just hold Ctrl and Alt and you can then click and drag your mouse to scale them. Hold Shift to preserve the aspect ratio. And here's a spicy tip for you. I didn't know this until recently, but apparently Godot 4.3 added a way to place a temporary pivot point to rotate objects around. With the select mode selected, you can press Shift V to create a pivot point at the mouse position. You can then switch to the rotate mode or hold Ctrl and drag to rotate around that temporary pivot point. Pretty cool. And with this PR, this functionality also works with scaling nodes in 4.4. As we saw earlier, scaling multiple nodes makes each of them use their own individual origins. But you can use the temporary pivot point to scale towards that point instead. As an animator, I absolutely despise the user experience for animation in Godot. The animation player is conceptually really strong, but in practice it makes me want to give up on my dreams. But hey, there have been quite a few improvements that make it a whole lot more bearable in 4.4. Let's have a look. So before I tell you what the improvements are, let me discuss some of the horrible UX we've had up to this point. When you change the value of a keyframe in the inspector, it just doesn't update visually. You have to scrub through the timeline to see what you're even doing. When you undo a value change, there's zero visual feedback to tell you if it even did the undo correctly. And again, you need to scrub the timeline to see if the change has been applied. If you change the position of a keyframe after the playhead position, the timing changes and obviously the value of the playhead should change, right? Well, clearly it's not obvious enough because nothing visually changes until, guess what? Until you scrub the stupid playhead again. Half my life is wasted scrubbing the damn thing. I could have just done all my dishes from all this scrubbing. But I'm so pleased to let you know that all of these issues have been resolved by this lovely individual. Everything now updates dynamically. Changing the value, done. Changing the easing, also done. Changing the timing, didn't even have to ask. Well, someone did have to ask, but he's got it covered. Undoing and redoing, this man has got your back. And all of this is his first ever contribution. Dude, just let me know and I'll come to your house and scrub all your dishes for you as a thank you. This is so awesome. And something I haven't even touched on is the fact that the Bezier curve editor also suffers from the same issues. And it's honestly so much worse where changing the curve gives you zero information about what you just did until you do the dishes. Well, as a follow-up, someone else was able to tackle this issue too, and now it updates in real time. And this was also their first ever contribution. God, I love the concept of open source so much. Another little improvement is how you can select multiple nodes and key their properties together in one click. You don't have to key them individually like a peasant anymore. You could probably tell that I'm very passionate about my hatred for animating in Godot, but I have to admit, it's getting better, and I absolutely love to see that. Don't get me wrong, I still hate it, but just a tiny little bit less now. Moving on from animation, I'm really excited for this next feature. Signals in C# now generate strongly typed emit methods. And from my primitive understanding, I think this means that signals are completely strongly typed now in C#. I've always preferred using C# events over custom signals because emitting them did not ensure parameter safety. You were able to emit signals with incorrect argument types or an incorrect number of arguments, and you wouldn't find out you made that mistake until runtime, just like how it is currently in GDScript. But now, you can use the generated emit signal function for your signal, which contains the correct signature for all the arguments that need to be passed. The big downside with C# events is the fact that you'll have to manually disconnect them when you have objects with different lifetimes. But with signals, you just connect and forget, which is such a great convenience. I'll be using custom signals a lot more now. In the inspector, you can now search for properties that are nested inside sub-resources. This is great for me because I can never seem to find what I'm looking for in the particle process material resource when I'm making particle effects, no matter how many times I look. And previously, the inspector search did not work for any nested resources. Now I can just search for it in 2 seconds. Speaking of searching, a spicy tip about searching. Most sections in Godot have a search bar on top that you can use to type in what you're looking for. With any section focused, you can press Ctrl F to focus on that section's search bar and start typing immediately. This applies to the Scene tab, FileSystem, and the inspector, just to name a few. Those were all the little changes I wanted to discuss. I know they aren't as flashy as most of the other stuff coming with the update, but personally I think these small quality of life changes make a huge impact on how much I like the software. Let me know what your favorites were. And also if you have any other features that you're excited about that I didn't mention. Now, I do want to bring up a couple of big heading changes. To address the elephant in the room, man, this is a small room, the new game window, and the ability to embed it in the editor. It's no doubt the best feature in 4.4, but you know about it already, and there's going to be a billion videos about it anyways, so I'll skip past it. But here's one of the smaller big heading changes that I'm looking forward to. You can now create buttons in the inspector that you can press to run some tool code in the editor. Before this, you would have had to make a boolean property with a setter, which works, but it's honestly not a workaround that I liked using at all, because the property just blends into the rest of the properties, and the concept of having a variable that never varies is a bit odd. But now the export tool button annotation makes it really easy to add a button looking button that you can press to run some code in the editor. I like that it's so simple to use. You don't have to mess with making inspector plugins or any plugins at all because it's just a normal annotation. Do note that you need to use the tool annotation at the top of your script if you want to use this feature. The next feature helps with interacting with the engine API a lot more straightforward. It's also going to ease some of the friction for beginners to learn the engine. Speaking of learning, a few weeks ago I got through Ali Abdal's productivity masterclass, available on Skillshare. I found this class pretty useful in boosting my personal productivity because Ali dives into practical mindsets and strategies to help you approach productivity more effectively. I found the reflective writing exercise pretty helpful because it allowed me to bring up some important points to myself about my own goals. This one was the first part in a series of classes available on Skillshare, the sponsor of this video. Skillshare is an online learning community that hosts a large range of carefully curated classes in various fields and puts them all right in front of you. It's just like a buffet where you eat skills for dinner. Whether you're passionate about art, design, music, or even niche topics like storytelling or creative writing, Skillshare has something for everyone. It's also perfect for people of all skill levels since it can help you pick up a new skill that you're interested in or help you refine a skill that you already have. The first 500 people to use the link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. It's 30 hours of free classes even if you commit just an hour a day, so check it out. Anyways, back to Godot. In 4.4, you can now hover over any symbol in code to peek at its details present in the docs. It makes the documentation a lot more accessible, and I've always found it annoying that I'm taken to a completely different page when I control click on a symbol. If you're a beginner, or even if you're not, you should make a habit of hovering over every single entity in code to gain a better understanding of what you're working with. This is a feature that's present in almost all IDEs, so it's nice to see it finally coming to Godot as well. I've recently made a robust video on learning to read and understand the docs, so check it out after this one. Next, you can right-click on the timeline in the animation player to create markers that you can give names to. You can select a pair of markers by shift-clicking them to create a custom play range to preview a specific part of the animation. I'm not too sure about what the intended use case for this feature is, but it does sound interesting. Let me know if you can think of any interesting use cases for this, because I really can't think of any. I do want to mention that you have the ability to just play a particular section of an animation with the new play section function. So there's that, I guess. Now let's speedrun through some even smaller additions that aren't really game changers, but they're little nice to haves that are worth mentioning. Collision Shape 3Ds can now also have a custom debug color just like the 2D version. The lines in the animation Bezier curve editor now have anti-aliasing applied to them, so they no longer look like they're on their last breath. It's always a bit needlessly confusing to interact with the script list and the scene list UI even for experienced Godot users, but it's going to be slightly less annoying now since scripts that are used in the currently opened scene are highlighted in the script list. So you now have something to guide you while you're jumping between scripts. The Alt right-click menu that shows a list of all the nodes below your mouse position now works in all modes, not just the select mode. Hovering over a string property that has a long value that doesn't fit in the inspector will display a tooltip with all of its text. If you enjoyed watching this video, subscribe for more. Learning to read the documentation is a really important skill as a programmer, and it's the one skill that will immediately turn you into a better developer once you get the hang of it. If you're interested in understanding how to learn the Godot documentation, watch this video on the left. Or if you want to understand all the fundamentals behind creating user interfaces and using control nodes, check out my control node masterclass. Anyways, thanks for watching, see ya.